Welcome to Geological Shop Talk. In this podcast, we bring you roughly 20 to 25 minutes of practical clinical methods, perspectives, and advice that has its work boots on. Listen in for clinical gems that you can begin to investigate the next time that you walk into clinic. Additionally, visit the show notes page for supporting materials from this week's guest on Shop Talk. All right, friends, roll up your sleeves. Let's get to work. This episode of Shop Talk is brought to you by LASA OMS, your clinic's partner in wellness. Later in the show, listen for a special offer from LASA to help you with all the transitions your patients face. The information shared on this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not intended as medical advice. Always consult a qualified licensed healthcare professional before making any decisions about your health or treatment. The host and guests are not responsible for any actions taken based on the content of this podcast. Andreas Brüch, welcome to our Shop Talk conversation. Today we're here to discuss colds and coughs, the seasonal stuff that happens here in the winter season. Delighted to have you here.
Yeah, good evening from Germany, and thank you for having me. I'm really delighted to be again with you.
Yes, well, we've had some great podcast conversations. You're a practitioner of Saam Acupuncture. You've been going back and forth between Germany and Korea for how long now?
Well, my first visit to Korea was in 1992, and actually my first visit that was concerned with Oriental medicine was in, I could say 1996. I started with Korean Qigong, actually. My first Korean Qigong teacher or master was a doctor of Oriental medicine in Seoul. And at that time, this Qigong style is a style that probably only, even in Korea, a few hundred people practice only, because it is a style that is specialized on making Oriental doctors able to feel the qi or the ki in Korean.
Okay. That's interesting. We should maybe have a podcast conversation on that at some point. Anyway, today we're here to talk about colds, coughs, again, the seasonal sorts of things, using acupuncture.
Yes. Okay.
I'm curious to know that when you see people with colds, again, from your acupuncture point of view, how do you think about them and what sorts of methods, especially with Saam, do you use to treat them with?
Yeah, actually, I would make a distinction in three different types of the progression of the disease. The first one is like in normal Chinese medicine. I regard early cold stage like a Taiyang invasion problem with wind cold or wind heat. The second would be like after that early invasion, if the disease goes on and if it's progressing very long and if he has a longer time of problem, then I would say these are three kinds of different approaches. And for the early approach, we can use Saam Acupuncture like in normal Chinese medicine. That means the surface is blocked and we want to open up. And since it is usually the invasion of the disease is in the Taiyang level, we could just use one of the two Taiyang meridians, small intestine or bladder meridian, and address the starting phase of the disease by opening up the surface or by activating these two meridians. So usually I use the bladder meridian, bladder Cheung in the early stage and combine it with pretty much, I think, normal Chinese medicine points. So in Chinese medicine, you would use small intestine 3 and bladder 62 also to open up the surface. So since Saam Acupuncture is a unilateral disease, we can use bladder Cheung on one side and use, for example, small intestine 3 and bladder 62 on the opposite side.
That's interesting.
To address the early stage
you're
of
actually
the
looking
disease.
at the extraordinary vessels at the same time.
Yes. Yeah, right.
Okay.
You can
Now I've got a
combine
question
this.
about that. This is one of these things that's been very interesting to me. The urinary bladder is considered a very cold meridian. It's
Yes.
Taiyang and it's water. So if somebody's already feeling kind of chilled and kind of cold,
Yeah.
how does that work? Because I mean I get it that it's Taiyang and you want to activate the surface because that's where the Wei Qi
Yeah.
is. Is the temperature variation in this case not that important?
I think not, because the idea in the Chongyok point combination, sometimes it's a little bit contradicting, yeah. But one of the ideas is to correct the energy in the meridian. So by using Chongyok, we can just strengthen the, how can I say, the upright or the original chi
Mm-hmm.
in this meridian, and in that way just make the body stronger to digest or to transform the disease. And usually that will be fine. I mean, if the person is very much freezing and you really see that patient in the face, we could use bladder sumkyok, obviously, to warm the person up. But since in a cold the progression sometimes is very fast, yeah, within hours maybe, or within 1 hour, or just it really depends on the momentary state you see your patient. And well, actually, usually those patients I see are either in a very beginning stage of a cold, because they say, oh, just it just develops at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Most patients I treated that way usually are my normal patients, and have some other condition and come in and say, okay, my cold is just starting, and you can, since we treat what we see when they come, I can just switch my approach to the patient and start treat
That makes
the cold.
sense.
Or they come after 1 or 2 days if they don't feel well, and then usually they're not in that very acute freezing stage where afterwards the fever is increasing and temperature is going up.
Yes. Now, for
So
the
it
people
really
that maybe
depends.
they're a few days later into it, what kind of patterns do you tend to see?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Usually, my approach in Saam Acupuncture is quite simple with that, actually. A cold is a respiratory disease. So, in most cases, if it's in the middle stage, I'm just using the lung meridian to treat the patient. So, if the cold is a little bit progressed and they are coughing and they are feeling a little bit warm, or they got a headache or whatever, you can just treat with lung chongyok. If there is not much phlegm or dampness or secrete in the respiratory tract present. Since lung chongyok is the combination of the metal element of the five elements and Taiyang, to strengthen the lung meridian in understanding of Saam acupuncture means to make it cooler and damper. So normal lung chongyok strategy would not be advisable for a patient who has a lot of phlegm. So they have a lot of expectorate. It's correct word in English? I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So, in other words, um, you want to see what the fluids are like. Are they more dry? Are
Yes,
they more wet?
right.
Also,
Yeah.
for people that may not be familiar with the Korean terminology, somjok means.
Chongyok is well, in conventional terms, we would say the tonifying needle combination.
Mm,
But I always try to explain that tonifying is not the correct term to use with Saam acupuncture if we translate this Chongyok, because it's not only tonifying. Since Saam acupuncture is always comprised, or the treatment needle combination, the four needle combination is always comprised of two needles tonifying and two needles sedating. It's kind of on the level of the points, it's a balanced treatment that is tonifying and sedating. So in general, what Chongyok is doing in some understanding is to strengthen the upright chi in the meridian. So it's better to use the word Chongyok, or to strengthen maybe the normal
mm,
function, the physiological function of the meridian, or the physiological yeah, controlling function of the meridian than to say I tonify this, because it's not quite correct in Saam acupuncture for treatment approach, I think.
It's really helpful to have these kind of nuances with what things actually mean. I know that if you look at the Chinese and you look at the character Bu, which we often translate as tonify, it means to repair or to mend.
Correct.
Like to put something back together that's a little worn out.
Yes. Right.
So
that's the same for Chongyok. The term Chong, I don't speak Chinese, but it's the term in Chinese medicine of Cheng, which means to correct or to rectify or So it's not just to tonify the energy, but to correct it in a way that is kind of normalizing or getting more healthy.
Going after that zheng qi, that upright qi.
Correct.
Now, you were saying you would also, especially if they're in a few days and there's some issues with the lungs, that you would work on the lung. It sounds to me, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like there's an aspect of Zangfu that you also think about.
Yeah, sure. In that sense, I'm actually plainly thinking about Zangfu, and since the lung meridian is on the Taiyang level of the 6 qi in Saam acupuncture, it also represents dampness. So the normal point combination of correcting the qi, the Chongyok, is first strengthening the normal energy in the meridian, but the 6 qi aspect means it has an aspect of cool dampness. So we are promoting cooling and a little bit damp energy in the meridian, which means we can use Lung Chongyok for like a normal cold and cough that has not a lot of secrete, or maybe even a little bit, because it has a correcting function. But as soon as there is more phlegm involved, it's not advisable to use this Chongyok point combination. And if we want to address phlegm in the respiratory tract directly, there is a special point combination or a variation of this Chongyok point combination. It's in English, we could call it a reverse Chongyok, which means the tonifying and the sedating of these 4 points is reversed. And in that sense, we can reduce the dampness. So lung Chongyok is tonifying spleen 3 and lung 9, and sedating lung 10 and heart 8. So the tonifying points are the earth points in this point combination. So if we tonify earth points, we are promoting dampness. And lung 10 and heart 8 are the fire points that are sedated. So we are reducing warmth or heat. And if we just flip this around, we will sedate the earth points, lung 9 and spleen 3, and tonify the fire points, lung 10 and heart 8. That means by switching this, we are reducing the earth, which means reducing dampness, and we are warming up. And by warming up, we can dry dampness. So by just reversing the normal Saam acupuncture point combination, we can address lung conditions that have a lot of fluid involved. Yeah, that's one possibility to do it.
This is one of the things about Saam acupuncture, Andreas, that I find absolutely fascinating. There is number one, there's a kind of intellectual rationale about it. The system makes sense if you understand how the 5 phases work, if you understand something of the characteristic of the 6 climatic qi, as I know you like to refer to it, then you can use these points in tremendous ways to change the balance of these very essential elements: dampness, dryness, heat, cold. I mean, we always talk about the 10,000 things, right? Meaning there's just a lot going on. But when you bring it down to certain fundamentals, everything comes off of some pretty basic principles.
Yes, it gets more systematic, and you might say it's basic, but to me it's very logical. And being a German, I like order and logic, and this helps great to take away some of the confusion, the fuzziness of Oriental medicine, in general is putting on all acupuncturists or on all therapists. So for me, it is very helpful if I have a, a, a system or a principle I can move along. And if you know it well, there are so many variations that will clinically help. And this is
Yes.
one of them.
So for people who have like a very dry cough, like maybe they've got some phlegm, but
Yes.
it's like dry and sticky and thick, would you be looking at, again, looking to tonify the lung because it brings that moisture? Or would you be looking to go
No,
more at
no.
tonifying the spleen?
No, you would probably sedate the spleen or tonify the large intestine meridian
Wait,
because
if
the
they're
large
already
intestine.
dry?
Sorry. If you're there dry,
If
yeah,
they're very
tonify the lung.
dry.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
misunderstanding. Yeah, to make them more damp. And if since it's about the respiratory tract directly, I
Right.
would think in a Sang Fu categorical diagnosis and just tonify the lung with this point combination lung Chongyok because it will promote dampness in general. And if we look at this point combination, again, Saam Acupuncture detail, it involves spleen 3 and spleen
Mm.
3 in the further development of Saam, the so-called Saam Bu acupuncture, is the most dampy point of all shu transport points. So since this is involved, it will promote dampness anyway. So it's not, in my opinion, it's not needed to switch to, for example, tonifying the spleen with this spleen Chongyok point combination because we have already involved in the lung point combination the most dampy
Yes.
individual single point of Saam acupuncture.
Yeah. So when looking at the transport points, maybe tell us a little bit about that. That spleen 3, it's the most wet point. It's the most,
Yes.
maybe we should say, influential point
Yeah.
for bringing fluids, proper physiological fluids into the body. Tell us a little bit about how that works, why that thinking is such.
Yeah. The acupuncture master Kim Hong-kyung, who developed this system of the so-called Sambo acupuncture points, he 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 says every of the shu transport points has 3 different influences in terms of the 5 elements, and they combine. So for every of the meridian, we have a five element connection by the Chang Fu 5 element characteristic. For example, for the spleen meridian, spleen is earth, so it's damp. But spleen, according to the 6G, is also Taiyang, which also represents dampness. And spleen 3 is the earth point of the earth meridian, so it's also dampness. So spleen 3, for example, has 3 times this dampness promoting effect if you tonify spleen 3. So these are the so-called Cheung Bu acupuncture points. There are 6 of these individual points which purely affect one of the 5 elements in the strongest way because their combination of meridian, Chang Fu relationship, and the 5 element aspect of the which shu transport point they are combine, and there are 6 of those points who have a pure 3 times same energy, and they are the very strong points, considered as a very strong effect for one element
It's
in
such an
in
interesting
Sambo
thing.
acupuncture.
Yeah. We'll probably have to have you back on for a regular podcast to go into that in much more depth. There's a
Yeah,
whole
you
lot
keep
to
on
it.
asking me every time, and I think this is a further development of Saam acupuncture by Kim Hong-kyung, and it really expands the whole clinical possibilities we have in regulating 6G and 5 element combination
Hmm.
even more than in the Saam 4-point
Yeah, one
combination
point does a lot.
system.
Heavy hitters, we call it in English.
Yeah.
Now, Andreas, what about people, they're over their cold, but they're not quite over it? There's that lingering
Yeah.
phase that people have sometimes. What are your thoughts about the meridian involvement on these and your
Yeah.
ways of treating it?
Well, generally speaking, as a quick fix, tonify the lung.
Oh, really?
Even if it sounds simplistic, but that would be my first idea always. Of course, you can make a differential diagnosis. Like in Chinese medicine, you can look at the tongue, you can look at the pulse, you can do a abdominal diagnosis and make a very individual diagnosis. But generally speaking, we can also look at what are their symptoms if it's a lingering, ongoing problem. So we could make really a difference. Do they have a cough? Is this cough dry or wet? Or have they a congested nose? How can I say? Ended the or did the cold move on to being what is that in English? Otitis media, otitis.
Oh,
Um,
earaches?
yeah. Okay, yeah. Earaches and treat accordingly, of course.
Hmm.
But yeah,
What do you
we,
do for nasal congestion?
yeah, nasal congestion, depending is it a dry or a wet nasal congestion, and then if it is a wet, also is a lot of sick pus coming out, a lot of phlegm, we must distinguish is it cold or hot phlegm. So a dry nose means we need to moisten it, right? And we can do this by again using lung chongyok. Like we can also moisten the lungs and treat a dry cough. If it is there's a lot of phlegm, we must distinguish is it heat or cold involved. So if you have a yellow greenish phlegm from the nose and it is blocked, that means we must to reduce dampness, either combined with heat or with cold. And reducing damp heat, the normal meridian chosen in Saam Acupuncture would be the large intestine. So that means applying the point combination of large intestine Chongyok, which is drying and cooling. And actually, in my clinical experience, it works really, really, very good. And for a dry cough, for a phlegm involved in the nose that is clear or white, we can diagnose it as cold phlegm. So we need to warm it up and dry it. And the best choice here would be to tonify the stomach meridian, because stomach meridian energy in Psalm 6G 5 element relationship is a combination of the earth element of the Changfu stomach and combined with the Yangming of the 6G. And if we combine this, it makes up of and Yangming is drying, it makes up of a warming and drying energy. Yeah. So we
Okay.
can use this and it also works very well, actually.
Yeah,
Um,
these all make a lot of sense. So it sounds to me, just to kind of recap, at the very beginning stage, you're often looking to treat the Taiyang meridians, either small intestine or
yeah.
urinary bladder in particular.
Yes, correct.
And it sounds like for after the condition has progressed a ways, it's affecting the lung, there's issues with either fluid or dryness, pretty much everything stays in that first circuit of Taiyang Yangming.
Yeah, it does. I think so. It's my clinical experience. Actually, I'm doing Saam acupuncture now for 15 years. And at the beginning, coming from Chinese medicine, I tried to do these differential diagnosis and look at every aspect and see, yeah, what is it? And there are so many different patterns in the textbooks of Chinese medicine. But my experience really is Lang Chongyok. If it's in the middle stage, it's almost, in most cases, excluding those we talked about, if it's too much dampness or too much phlegm involved, it's really working well. That's just my clinical
Experience.
experience.
That's
So
great.
same, for example, with allergic rhinitis.
Mm,
I'm just doing nothing else actually in allergic rhinitis than treating lung chongyok. And sometimes if I feel the kidney is weak and a little bit involved, like in the Chinese medicine diagnosis of the kidney cannot grasp the qi of the lung. I'm just tonifying the kidney additionally. And I mean, besides treating supplementary points, but the basic treatment strategy is just that simple. I'm
right.
sorry.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
just my experience that works. Why should I think about so many other things if this clearly is good?
it's hard to argue with what works. And if you've been at it long enough, to have tried a bunch of different things. You know, let's face it, you get some experience, you see what works, you keep it, you see what doesn't work, you get rid of it. It sounds like a great place where people can start to investigate working with Saam a bit in conditions that are commonly seen. And as you've just described for us, there's a few treatments that are very, very effective in your clinical experience. So I really appreciate you joining us here on Shop Talk. And we'll probably have to have you back again sometime to talk about some other conditions.
If you don't mind, I just want to add one or two sentences so that the listeners will understand. In Saam Acupuncture, those 4 needle points combinations are always just one aspect of the treatment because it sets the basic treatment strategy, but you can supplement it, of course, with other points that we know from treating, in our case now, cold or blocked nose or sinusitis or something like that. So the one part is this, and the second part is always like choose your additional points, from general treating with acupuncture these problems.
Okay.
I think that's very important.
So you can investigate the Saam acupuncture and at the same time use everything that you've already learned about acupuncture.
Correct. Absolutely.
It's not an either-or situation. You can combine these things together.
Yeah, you can. Absolutely. It's a very open system. In acupuncture, in Saam acupuncture, the specialty is that those 4 needles are always applied on one body side. So the other body side is free for the additional treatment, whatever that might be. Yeah. In my case, I'm using a lot of moxa treatment. I love moxa. I'm using a lot of rice corn moxa, direct moxa from Japanese meridian style moxa treatment, and also from Korean moxa approaches. So, but that is my style. You could just combine it with pretty much everything.
Great. Well, thanks so much for your time today.
You're welcome. It was really a pleasure to be here again, Michael.
When you're looking for herbs, tools, and supplies to guide your patients through life's transitions, you need quality you can trust. Lhasa OMS offers an unmatched selection of acupuncture needles for every style, herbs from all your favorite manufacturers, and everything else you need to run your clinic with confidence. Visit LhasaOMS.com to source the herbs and other supplies featured in this series. Use the code FERTILE15 for 15% off your next purchase at LhasaOMS.com. Some exclusions apply. See website for details. That's it for this episode of Shop Talk. Did you learn something that brought a patient to mind? Don't keep a good thing to yourself. Share it with a friend. They'll be happy that you did. And tune in again for our next episode of Shop Talk.